Hello, Mrs. Green here. In this lesson, we're going to think about the poem Medusa by Carol Ann Duffy. One theme in the poem is how people's appearance can change. To get us started, let's think about this question. How important are looks? Take a couple of minutes to think about the celebrity photos. Why do they resort to cosmetic surgery? And have a look at the Star Challenge. How do you think they felt afterwards? Pause the video now and write down your thoughts. We're going to be comparing today's poem about Medusa with the poem we read last time about Midas's wife. Remember, Midas was the king with the golden touch. We're also going to write about the poems. You all know about P's paragraphs. But for writing about two poems, we'll also need to add C's, which I'll explain later in the video. So, what do you know about Medusa? In Greek mythology, Medusa was a gorgon, a monster who had living snakes for hair. Whoever looked into her eyes would turn to stone. She was eventually beheaded by Perseus, who kept her head to use as a weapon to turn his enemies into stone. However, she had started life as a beautiful girl, a princess, who was turned into a monster by a goddess for falling in love and marrying Poseidon, thus breaking her vow of celibacy. Shunned by her family, she eventually became as hideous on the inside as she was on the outside. So, there are many versions of ancient stories like Medusa's. Our poet, Carol Ann Duffy, asks us to think again about this one. Who do you think the heroes and villains in the story are? There are 4 characters in this tale. Poseidon, the sea god, Perseus, a hero, Medusa, and Athena, who is a goddess. So, I'd like you to listen to this version of the story and decide who you think the heroes and villains are. Medusa was the daughter of 2 sea gods. She grew up and became well known for her beauty and purity, especially praised for her wonderful hair. She resisted the men who lusted after her, though, and became a priestess in the temple of Athena. The sea god Poseidon became obsessed with her after she rejected him, and eventually, when he was in the middle of a hot dispute with Athena, he abducted and raped Medusa. Athena responded by punishing Medusa. She cursed her, and her beautiful hair became snakes. Medusa became a wild and strange creature whose gaze could turn enemies to stone. All the warriors who used to lust after her now dreamed of stealing her head and using it as a weapon. Eventually, Perseus, who'd been given magical weapons and protections by several gods, including Athena, managed to lop Medusa's head off. She was pregnant as a result of Poseidon's attack, and as she died, the winged horse Pegasus was born from her body. Perseus went on to use her head as a trophy and a weapon. So, pause the video now and jot down your opinions on who are the heroes and the villains in this story. Did you change your mind about anyone? Now, draw a series of mind maps showing connotations. That means what these words make you think of. Pause the video and give yourself some time to think and draw your maps. Before I read the poem, let's look at some vocabulary. First, gravel. Gravel is loose stones. Boulder. A boulder is a large rock. Gorgon. A gorgon is a monster. Spewed. Spewed means vomited. Fragrant. Fragrant means perfumed. You may remember we had it in the last poem as well. Now choose one of these words and explode it in your notebook. Now, in a moment, I'm going to read the poem. While I read, you can be thinking about the images and devices you notice. You could, for example, look out for some of the devices we discussed in the Mrs. Midas lesson. They were personification, simile, metaphor, and some others. So, if you look at the example here, somebody's written down the quote, "as though my thoughts hissed and spat on my scalp." And I've seen there a simile, a personification, and an alliteration. If you want to do the superstar challenge and write down an inference, for this one you might think, my thoughts hissed and spat. Are my thoughts snakes? Are my thoughts slithery and dangerous? Right, I'm going to read the poem now, and remember you're looking out for images and devices. Medusa by Carol Ann Duffy. A suspicion, a doubt, a jealousy grew in my mind, which turned the hairs on my head to filthy snakes, as though my thoughts hissed and spat on my scalp. My bride's breath soured, stank, in the grey bags of my lungs. I'm foul-mouthed now, foul-tongued, yellow-fanged. There are bullet tears in my eyes. Are you terrified? Be terrified. It's you I love, perfect man, Greek god, my own. But I know you'll go, betray me, stray from home. So better for me if you were stone. I glanced at a buzzing bee. A dull grey pebble fell to the ground. I glanced at a singing bird. A handful of dusty gravel spattered down. I looked at a ginger cat. A house brick shattered a bowl of milk. I looked at a snuffling pig. A boulder rolled in a heap of shit. I stared in the mirror. Love gone bad showed me a gorgon. I stared at a dragon. Fire spewed from the mouth of a mountain. And here you come with a shield for a heart and a sword for a tongue. And your girls. Wasn't I beautiful? Wasn't I fragrant and young? Look at me now. So, who do you think she's talking to? What is her mood and why? And who are the heroes and villains this time? Pause the video for a moment and write down your answers. Now listen carefully to the task, then you can read through your notes or the poem or both and choose the most striking image from each stanza. Make a drawing for each one and write down the quote to go with it. So you'll have 7 quick sketches and 7 quotes or images. Label any devices the writer has used, and if you can, have a look at the Superstar Challenge. You can include an inference. This is what you think the quote you've used suggests. So for our example, stanza 1, if you choose, "as though my thoughts hissed and spat on my scalp," you might say that her thoughts are like snakes. Does that mean they're slithery and dangerous? You might point out alliteration because of the th sounds and the sp and sk sounds. So, pause the video now and have a think about what you want to do, and then do your drawings and your notes. Now there are 2 options for the main writing task. You could write 2 or more piece paragraphs about Mrs. Midas and about Medusa, or you could do a piece paragraph about both poems, comparing them. Option 1 is the easier one, but have a go at option 2 if you want to stretch yourself. At least 1 piece paragraph is expected from students in the top sets. Let's look at the sentence guide first. Look at the chart. The top half is for a piece paragraph. You've all done this before, and there are sentence guides in the chart that you can use if you want to. The bottom half, starting with compare, adds a C's paragraph for comparing or contrasting 2 poems. If you think a point you've picked from your second poem does the same job as the first one, you'd start your compare paragraph with something like similarly or in the same way. If you think it's very different, then you'd start with something like by contrast or however. But you need to show how you found points from both poems that are either the same or notably different. When you do a compare paragraph, you need to end with a zoom out. Look at the blue bit at the bottom there, where you discuss the effect the 2 poems have together. And remember, these are written by the same woman, so perhaps you could say something about the mood or the ideas that she's suggesting in both of them, or the difference between the 2 of them. So, pause the video now, organise your ideas and have a go. Finally, have a look back again in your notebook or on the video at the different versions of the Medusa story. Do you think the characters can really be divided into heroes and villains? Would everyone agree which is which? And can you explain why or why not? I'll leave you to think about that one, and this is the end of the video. See you next time.